talked to, my dad and I and Lisa have talked to Jay and Evie and Emily, and being baptized has nothing to do with this road or this spot. It is very cool to be here in the spot where Jesus, in the river where Jesus baptized people and John the Baptist baptized people, but it's not about where we're at or what we're wearing. It's about what's going on in the hearts of each person up here. And as we talked to these three, I think that they thought that, I think each of them thought we were trying to convince them not to get baptized. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And so for everyone else sitting here, a lot of you have been baptized, and I'd like you to hear the same biblical ideas and ideas from Jesus that these guys heard as they thought we were trying to convince them not to follow Jesus or not to be baptized. Jesus tells us that in this world we will have trouble, and that before we make a decision to follow Jesus, we should count the cost. And I would encourage everyone sitting here to recount the cost and think about, are you willing to follow Jesus no matter what the cost? And these three had to be able to talk to us and say, we're willing to follow Jesus no matter what the cost. And that's why I said they felt like we were trying to get them not to be baptized, but really, Jesus sends a warning and says, make a decision. This is going to cost you a lot. We've heard Yehuda talk about how his family had a funeral for him. And for us, that's a pretty foreign concept. When we've been to North Africa, we've seen people baptized. Well, we've seen a little pool in a backyard where people are baptized, and it's a really big deal among their people to make that decision. And so, even though we're not in that situation right now as Americans, we still must be willing to count the cost and say, am I willing to do what Jesus said? Am I willing to follow Jesus in the hard things, like keeping my mind pure, in honoring my father and mother, in confessing my sin when I am angry and I'm mad at everybody else on the bus, when I'm frustrated with the people in my room, when whatever? Am I willing to follow Jesus when it's hard? And so this is what it says in Luke, and Bob had to find this for me. I couldn't find it. But in Luke 14, it says this, and I don't know exactly where this happened, but it says, large crowds were traveling with Jesus. He turned to them and said, if anyone, and this isn't what you normally hear when you hear the gospel shared, but this is what Jesus said. If people come to me and are not truly ready to abandon their fathers, mothers, wives, children, brothers and sisters, as well as their own lives, they cannot be my disciples. So those who do not carry their crosses and follow me cannot be my disciples. Suppose you want to build a tower. You would first sit down and figure out what it costs. Then you would see if you have enough money to finish it. Otherwise, you lay the foundations and can't finish the building. Everyone who watches will make fun of you. They'll say, this person started to build, but could not finish the job. And then he tells a more serious story even than that. Or suppose a king is going to war against another king. He would first sit down and think things through. Can he and his 10,000 soldiers fight against a king with 20,000 soldiers? If he cannot, he'll send an ambassador to ask for terms of peace while the other king is still far away. In the same way, none of you can be my disciples unless you're willing to give up everything. Salt is good, but if salt loses its taste, how will you restore its flavor? It is not any good for the ground or for the manure pile. People throw it away. Let the person who has ears listen. In the same way, none of you can be my disciples unless you give up everything. And so we talked to these three about that you can't follow Jesus for real unless you give up everything. Every selfish desire, even the possibility of your relationship with your family, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, for the sake of Christ, if that's what it takes. We can't follow Christ unless we're willing to do that. We're not truly his disciples unless we're willing to do that. And I said to Lisa, it's a conversation that we should all have with each other much more often, if we're still willing to give up everything to follow Christ. And so these three, after some thinking and being confused about why we were being so hard on them, have all said that they want to profess their faith in Jesus no matter what the cost. And so that's how we're here right now.